Without any further, let's gather. To all of you who are watching on live stream, please forgive us for our tardiness here. We're trying to bring people back from what they love to do so much, and that is fellowship over refreshments. We're so happy to have all of you here today. This is a kickoff of our fall season with Karen and John. We're so delighted to have them as our member spotlights today, and knowing that we've got a wonderful packed house again to be able to hear them. We're blessed as a church, and we're so blessed with them. In working with them, I've learned so very much and been so inspired by them, not only about how much harmony they have because of what they've had in common and how they've grown together, but also about their faith and their life of service to others. As far back as being in Sunday school to today, you both have been role models of service to others. And I would just say that as we approach their spotlight today, let's see this as an extension of our service, where we're all inspired by the service we had today and the whole connection we have here as a church, and extend ourselves to be open in our hearts and minds to learn as much as possible about these two precious people, and to apply it to our own lives and to our love for one another here in this church. Without further ado, John and Karen Boatright.
Thank you. And I do want to say a special thank you to Chris and to Dustin with the back and forth to make sure we had everything prepared for today. So a big thank you, because I know it takes a lot of time on your part as well, and it was fun. So anyway, with that, I will go ahead and get started. And this is my mom and dad, and I was born on October 10, 1950, so I'm 73 years old. You can always say, well, why do you love Naples? It's because I feel young here. But the other part of it is, you know, it's just a beautiful place, and people talk about paradise, but we get to live in paradise. And, you know, we are just so pleased to be a part of Naples Community Church. It's the most wonderful church body we've ever been in our lives, and it's the most loving, giving church that we've ever seen in a body in the church. So thank you. That's a blessing to us. With that, I did have and the way we're going to do this is I'm going to give my side, Karen will give her side, and we're going to go back and forth, and then we'll get to us at the end. So with that, though, my mom and dad were married in the 40s after World War II, and this is their wedding picture on the day that they were married. And I had the opportunity to know my dad only for 8 years. He died at the tender age of 42 with heart disease, as his mother did in her early 40s when he was very young and she was very young. So that's one of the reasons that I'm a little bit of an exercise nut, but there are some people in here that exercise a lot more than I do, so I'll just leave it at that. This is a picture of my dad when he was in the Marines, 1936 to 39, and then during World War II, he went into the Merchant Marines and served there during the war. This is my mom. She did get to see both my boys being born. This is my youngest son, Jim. He is now 45, and a picture of her with him, you can tell he's got something red all over him, but she loved her grandsons, and so this was one of the few pictures that we could find of that. This is my brother. We are a year and 4 days apart. So, you know, we were pretty close, not twins, but it was always said what one couldn't think of, the other could. And so just a couple of quick stories on that. They are very true. Right, wrong, or indifferent, we weren't necessarily model kids. And I always say that I got plenty of whippings, as they were called, when I was a kid, but I never got nearly as many as I deserved. So I'll leave it at that. But when my mother and dad were still living in a rental home, and she was a beautician, my dad was a state patrolman in Georgia, and we lived on the single major highway coming through Swainsboro, Georgia. And so my mother had her beauty shop in the front of this rental house. And so she's in there fixing these two ladies' hair. They were sisters. They were never married. And they were pretty well-to-do. And she's standing there at the chair, and she's looking out the window, and she sees this 3-year-old and this 4-year-old out there with a paintbrush and paint from the garage, and this is a brand new car. And if you can imagine this in 1953, 54 time frame, and we're out there just stroking that car, putting paint on it. And of course, my mother probably had a heart attack, but it didn't turn into that at that point. But anyway, she called the Chevrolet company. They came and got the car, and by the time she finished giving both of these ladies permanents, they had the car returned, and there was no damage, although I can assure you our spirit was damaged when my dad got home that night. So, but one other item, my brother always loved to play with matches, and I was not the pyromaniac that he was, but when I was a baby, he at one point came up with the idea of building a fire under my bassinet, but fortunately he was caught, so here I am. You got to deal with that. But, you know, I just want to say, you know, following the death of my dad at the age of 8, my mother raised us, single-handedly did, I think, you know, the most wonderful job a parent could do. She was dearly loved by my brother and I. We were raised in a Christian home. We were in the church when the doors were open. It was not anything that you argued about. You just did it. And we never saw Disney growing up. We could see Bonanza because you could get home by 9 o'clock on Sunday night. But anyway, that's basically my childhood and growing up, so I will turn it over to Karen at this point.
Okay. I was not the hellion that my husband was. I was a sweet little girl. I was born July 21st, 1955, so I am 68 years old, so I'm the young woman in his life. I, too, was brought up in a Christian home. I grew up in, we moved to Fayetteville, Georgia when I was in the 4th grade, and my parents were very much involved in the church, and we were there whenever the doors were open. That means any day of the week. And my dad helped build 2 churches, 2 Baptist churches, and also he was a deacon in the Baptist church before I was even born. But there was a mention about being sunbeams. And the Baptist church, on Wednesday night, everybody went to church, and it was like little classes. Well, when you're the youngest ones in the group, you're called sunbeams. And as you get older, you go into GAs, or Girls Auxiliary, or RAs, which is Royal Ambassadors. But John and I were both sunbeams, so that's where the sunbeam comes from in the story. My dad was a builder, and along with his 4 brothers formed McClanahan Incorporated, and they were actually the first subcontractors for condos in the city of Atlanta. So it goes back a long way. I grew up on a farm, about 100 acres, and Daddy was not a farmer, but you wouldn't know it by all the things that we were involved with. We had cows and chickens and pigs and horses. At one point, we had 17 horses. And I did have to feed the pigs and the chickens, and they will peck your hands when you're trying to get the eggs out of their little basket. And, but we were a very close-knit, group with the people in our community. My mother, Mabel, was a homemaker, and she carted my brother and I around to all these extracurricular activities. And she was also a phenomenal seamstress, and she made pretty much all my clothes going into through high school. And I have one brother, Chip. Chip is 5 years older than me, and he is a retired pharmacist, and no other siblings, and he has 2 nieces. So that is my part on the very beginnings for the base.
Okay, with that, and I thought we'd forgotten to cover a few pictures, but it went dark. Okay. And I've already mentioned my brother, and that's a picture of he and I back in on my birthday in 2020, I believe it was, up in Atlanta. He lives down in Vidalia, Georgia, and is retired, and so this is my oldest son, Ben, and his wife, Holly. They married in 1998, and so they've been married quite a long time now. And this is the entire family, 2 beautiful granddaughters. Alexis is on the right-hand side, and Annalise is on the left side. Alexis is a senior at the University of Alabama, and Annalise is a freshman at Samford University over in Birmingham, and that's where my oldest son, Ben, went to school as well. And then this is my youngest son, Jim. Jim is 45, and he is and I would just say, covering Ben and Holly, Ben is in IT and basically logistics, and what they do is they go in, and after the software is sold, he tailors that to the clients that they work with, whether it's automotive, whether it's in the computer business, but they have clients in Europe, Asia, and pretty much all over the U.S., and so he travels quite a bit, but he does work from home, and he enjoys what he does, and it keeps him challenged. And Holly is an educator at a Christian school, and so very blessed with them. And then Jim is the youngest at 45. His wife Emily had been a school principal, but she now does volunteer work. Jim owns his own general construction company. And I might just say it's in our blood. And in the blood comes from my grandfather was a general contractor. My father and his brother worked in construction with my grandfather after World War II until my dad was a state patrolman. And then my uncle, obviously, they're both deceased, but he was a career military man, but then after he got out of the military with 30-plus years, he worked construction up until the time he died. And this is Jim's 2 children. Madeline is now 17, and she is a junior in high school, and Whitaker is in the back. So 3 granddaughters, the oldest grandchildren, and Whitaker, the youngest, and he's the one to carry on the Boatright name for us. And so with that, I will turn it back over to Karen.
This is my mother, and I think she's holding me. If it's not me, it's my brother, but there's no one to ask, so I'll go with it. What's the next one, hon? The guy always has the clicker, right? Okay, that's a picture of my mother and dad. Dad is Jack and Mabel are their names, and I've mentioned they're both deceased now in heaven. I might have to take that clicker. Clicking. Okay, and that's my brother Chip, and he lives in Birmingham, and my sister-in-law Janet. Okay, this gets kind of crazy. All right, we're talking about our children. Johnny and I were both married before, and I met my first husband, Ross, when I was in college, and we were married for 17 years. And this is a picture of my kids when they were very young, and as you can see, I have brown hair. I am a bleached blonde. It's either that or just turned gray, you know, so. Do you want to go to the next one? This is my oldest son, Chris. He's at the back with the hat on. His wife, Amber, 3 grandchildren, Jocelyn, Aiden, and Michaela. Chris is a phenomenal guitarist. Music runs in their blood. Jocelyn, the oldest granddaughter on my side, is very gifted artistically and was in governor's honors for the state of Georgia 2 years. And she is now, she graduated from high school this past year, and she is attending technical school. Chris and his family live in Georgia, and he works for procurement for the state of Georgia. And the other 2 grandchildren, Aiden and Michaela, are very involved with their high school bands and doing great. This is my youngest son, Matt, and my grandson, Jace, and his girlfriend, Nicole. Matt is a civil engineer, designs bike paths around the country. Jace is 10 years old and thoroughly enjoying 5th grade, and they enjoy rock climbing, hiking, biking, and ultimate frisbee. Matt was on the ultimate frisbee team for Georgia Tech while he was studying there. And then Nicole would be thrilled if she joined our family. We love her. They have 2 rescue dogs, Basil and Max, and that's actually how they met. Someone said, oh, you know, your dogs, we know this lady, and she has a dog that looks just like yours. Well, come, you know, checking, talking and all. Both of the dogs are rescue dogs, and it ends up that they are brothers. So that's a good story. Okay, your turn.
Okay, this is a picture from kindergarten at the end of the year as I was about to finish kindergarten. Back in those days, you didn't graduate. But anyway, it's the lead in talking briefly about education. And I mentioned I grew up in Swainsboro, Georgia. It's halfway between Macon and Savannah if you don't know your Georgia history. But anyway, I went kindergarten through 12th grade in the same school buildings that both my parents went to school in previously as they were going through school, and that they graduated in. And some of my teachers through school also taught my parents, so taught my brother. It's one of those places you not only went to church with them, when you went to school and with your mother having a business in the house and fixing ladies' hair, there were no secrets. You were always in the spotlight, no pun intended. Following high school, I went to Middle Georgia for 1 year, then went to Georgia Southern. It's now Georgia Southern University. And I graduated there with a BS in industrial management. And from that point, At the age of 32, and we'll talk about career here in a moment, but I realized that I really needed an education because while I was a pretty good high school student, I wasn't such a great college student, and I realized in my early 30s, if I was going to realize some of my career goals, I really needed a good education, so I went back and got my MBA, and at least there, I earned really good grades. So, but anyway, with that, back.
Okay. I mentioned that we moved to Fayetteville when we were in the 4th grade. And my mother always told me that if I joined an organization to get involved, you just don't join it to say, I'm a member of such and such, but to be actively involved. I did go to Fayette County High School. There was only one high school in the county when I went there. So you knew everybody. You knew everybody. There, I was active. I was a cheerleader for 6 years, and quite honestly, I'm not coordinated enough to dribble a basketball and run, but I can jump up in the air, and I have a big mouth. I was president of Future Teachers of America and state vice president of Georgia Library Assistants. And after graduating, I went to Clayton State, which is a local community college, for about 2 to 3 quarters. And I lived at home because my brother was finishing up his pharmacy degree at the University of Georgia. And quite honestly, my parents could not afford to send both of us off, so I stayed at home. But then I went to University of West Georgia. I think that's at some sorority event. And I graduated in 1977 with a BA in history and minor in media. I thought I would be an archivist, that's someone who traces family backgrounds. I did not like that. And then I considered teaching. I did some student teaching, and I quickly found out that I was not a person to teach teenagers. But while at West Georgia, I was president of my sorority, Chi Omega. I was secretary treasurer of the Phi Alpha Theta, the History Honor Society, and I was named a who's who among students in American colleges and universities. Not really sure how that happened, but it did. And that is a picture of me in in college with the brown hair, and this at some sorority event. So there you go, Stinker.
Okay, and with that, talking about my career at Delta, I started with Delta right out of finishing at Georgia Southern in April '72, and I ended up spending 46 of my 50 years with Delta and my working career. And so in the beginning, when I started at Delta in '72, you were always told you start at an entry-level position. Well, the only entry-level position after finishing Georgia Southern was for me to be a cargo agent at the time, which meant working midnight shift, air cargo. And back in those days, Delta had prop freighters made by Lockheed, and we shipped everything from aircraft engines to orangutans to elephants to horses. And so that's what you do on the midnight shift. Back then, cargo was extremely profitable, but the world has changed a lot now, and you know, with the cargo business, UPS, FedEx, and even now the post office, a lot of those things have changed through the years. But that's where I spent my first 3.5 years. Then I worked the ramp, the ticket counter, the gate, and in 1977 had an opportunity to be promoted to a facilities engineer, which was the design and construction for Delta. And so I went over to the general offices, which is the corporate headquarters, and spent the rest of my career there at Delta in the corporate headquarters. I moved from facilities engineer after about 8 years to senior engineer, and then had the opportunity to become an assistant to one of our senior vice presidents in 1987. I did that for 25 months, which was honestly one of the best learning positions you could ever have. But my senior vice president at the time was just a great career role model to me, and he gave me so many pointers on what I needed to do to succeed in my career, and I just owe much of that to him. He is now obviously since deceased, but he was a great role model, and we just loved each other. We enjoyed working together, and it was an opportunity that began to catapult my career. From there, in 1989 to 91, I worked in Mexico and traveled out of Atlanta, but to Mexico every week. 91 and 92, mostly lived over in Europe with the Pan Am acquisition with Delta. And then when my former boss in the facilities department retired, then I was promoted to director of facilities, and in 94 picked up the property side of the business, which was airport leasing, negotiation, working with airports around the world for Delta. In addition to having design and construction, and I was promoted to VP in 96, and that's a position I held until 2003. Then at that point in time, I was recruited to go over and run the capital program for the city of Atlanta, the capital program being major airport rebuilding in Atlanta for $5.4 billion. I ran that program for 3.5 years, but I quickly learned I am not a bureaucrat. I will never be a bureaucrat, and I just can't do it. And what I learned quickly was when the gentleman I reported to at the time said, "John, one thing you just don't understand about us, we will always spend $1 to chase a nickel." And that economics made no sense to me. And I see Ian over there smiling because I know he likes that kind of understanding. But anyway, in 2007, I was recruited to go back to Delta in the VP position that I left in 2003. And I held that position until I retired again in 2012. My hair was brown when I went back in 07, but as you can see, and that picture up there is 2003, but it was still almost that brown except on the edges. But I burned a lot of brain cells from 2007 to 2012. We went through mergers and a lot of growth and a lot of changes in the business, but it was by far the most rewarding in the world, working for a great CEO at the time, and the gentleman that I reported to, who's now the CEO. I had a very wonderful career. I always loved what I did, and I enjoy work. I guess probably need to have a brain check somewhere along the way, but I do. I enjoy working. And so in 2012, when I retired, I worked as a consultant for Delta another year up in New York, and then a company in New York for a couple of years. And then in 2014, I was asked to go back to Delta for a third round, and I was president and CEO of the Delta Flight Museum, and I did that until May of last year, and then sort of fully retired. But that was my third retirement, and I've had my real estate brokerage in Georgia since the 1990s. And I decided when I moved to Florida that I wanted to get my brokerage license here. And I should have done it while I was still a Georgia resident because I knew the reciprocal was there, but after you change your address, you have to go through all the testing and everything. So I had to do a lot of studying, but I did get my brokerage license earlier this year in Florida. And so, I'm blessed to be doing that and just enjoy what I do with a little bit of real estate activity these days. So that's it. Back to you. Oh, well, yeah, Karen's going to make me talk about the runway. This was part of the work over at the airport. This was the cornerstone of that $5.4 billion program. We spent $1.2 billion on this, but we did bring it in on time and on budget. And this is me standing in May of '06 at the end of the runway. And I had the opportunity of flying on the airplane that was the first to land on it. And so with that, it's back to you.
Okay. I too started at Delta from college. I started there in November 1, 1977. And you learn when you're working at Delta, things are very important, your employment number and your date of employment. So it's November 1, 1977. I started off in the personnel department. At Delta, you have to start off at ground level. For an entry-level position, that's no longer the case. But I started off filing papers in personnel form, in personnel file. So I knew a lot of scoop on people that I knew, grew up with, even, yeah. But the deal was, you don't talk about it. You talk about it and you are fired immediately. And I worked as a secretary at the maintenance department. And then I worked 8 years as a reservationist, and I taught classes. After that, I did leave reservations for a short time, and I was a writer in consumer, it's called Consumer Affairs. That's where people write in with their complaint letters, and once in a while you might see a positive letter. But I absolutely hated that job because it's really negative when you're only reading negative things all day long and you're having to respond to it. So I hated that. And I did return 2 reservations, and I was tapped to help create a new department, a new section in the marketing area. It was called Small Meeting Networks. And I'll back up a second. There's an area called Delta Meeting Networks, and now was an area called Small Meeting Networks. And what the purpose was to negotiate for Delta to be the official carrier to meetings and conventions when people come from various locations to one meeting site. And that's what we did. There was already the very large area for Delta Meeting Network with the big conventions like American Wind Energy, American Dental, the very large ones. Well, they decided they needed something for small meetings. It could be a family reunion. It could just be a group of women who say, hey, we're going to go have a girls' weekend. You needed to have about 15 people for us to do this. But I was tapped to create this new program along with with a gentleman, Tommy Ressam, a dear friend. And I taught this new program to representatives from the 21 Delta reservation offices around the country. And within 6 months, we were generating over $1 million a month. So I had a great, great team, and you're hitting that button. Why does that guy always have to play with the buttons on the clicker? Anyway, from Small Meeting Network, I started off as a coordinator with the larger meetings, Delta Meeting and Delta Meeting Network, and I progressed to a supervisor and then a marketing representative. I represented Delta at industry events, trade shows, and I was the liaison for customer events for national accounts for Marriott Hotels, Hyatt, Bass, and I also was the liaison with convention and visitors bureaus in Cincinnati, Orlando, and Salt Lake City. But I was also the liaison with industry organizations like Religious Conference Management Associations, Meeting Professionals International. I did have to write some speeches, and they were really, really bad speeches, I have to say. And one of the groups that I handled was the PGA merchandise show, keeping in mind this is conventions. And I attended, I was working the trade show, and I don't know anything about golf. I didn't know anything. I had no idea who this man was. And I had some friends that said, hey, you want to go to an event after work? And it's over at SeaWorld, and the shark's going to be there. And I thought, there's sharks? Yeah, there's sharks at SeaWorld. Well, anyway, I ended up meeting Greg Norman, did not know who he was, but I have that hat, and he did sign it for me. He was very, very nice. And after, I also met Byron Nelson, but he was just like a sweet teddy bear. Didn't know who he was, so but that was okay. I did burn out of all the travel that was needed for this particular job, and I left that area and went into meeting planning directly for Delta. Oh, you want to go to the next one? There it is. But Delta Events handled basically all of the internal meetings that Delta had. We worked with all executive levels. We did the board of directors, with share owners. But we also worked, say, with flight attendants, the pilots, any group that needed an event gathering. And we negotiated the contracts, we found the location, we did all the work, selected the food and beverage. And over this time, I've handled at least 800 meetings, and I've assisted with employee events with up to 10,000 people. It's got to remember it's a large company with 80,000 plus people. This is the group of, at one point, all these ladies were meeting planners together for Delta, and just had a great time. Very, very close group of friends, now, as then and now. What's the next one, sweetheart? Oh, and that's just a picture of my retirement from Delta. I worked there for 30 years and retired at age 52, which is the perfect number for Delta where you can get a pension. So 30 years and 52, I retired on a Friday, and on Monday I started my new position at the Georgia World Congress Center, which is the 4th largest convention center in the country. And I was a national sales manager there. I worked with the medical market, the scientific engineering, and agricultural. And I worked there for 4.5 years, and I got my youngest son, Matt, out of Georgia Tech. College is paid for, and I didn't want to do that anymore, and I quit, which was great. College is paid for. And then Chick-fil-A knocked on my door, and these were people I had worked with. And I actually did some marketing and catering for the original Dwarf House in Atlanta. And these are the just most wonderful people in the world. There's so much that the average person does not know what Chick-fil-A does behind the scenes and never asks for credit. They're just very humble, giving people. It was a pleasure to work with them. Anyway, I did that for about 4 months, and then I can go ahead and talk about Daddy, can I? Anyway, after I quit Chick-fil-A, I stepped back. It's one thing to easily order 10,000 Chick-fil-A's for events, which I did do, than to have to manage getting those ready to go there. Big difference. It's a lot easier just to pick up that phone. And after that, I was probably off work for maybe 3 weeks, and my father became ill, and I was his primary caregiver for 4.5 years. It was not an easy time. He was not happy. He was angry, and he took it out on me. So that's why I don't do care and compassion. Oh, and that's Brenda.
I know we're running long, so we'll try and move through this next part here quickly. But this is one of my retirements, and obviously Karen on the right. the lady on the left, Brenda Walton, a very, very dear friend, but part of my going back to Delta in '07 was said, you got to let me have Brenda back to work with me, because she knew what was coming out of my mouth and in my mind before I did, and she always took care of it. Just a wonderful blessing. With that, Karen and I had the opportunity in 1998 to meet each other. We like to tell the story, and you can step in here anywhere you want to, but you won't. But anyway, Karen and her team had been moved into my work area, and at that point I was VP over corporate real estate. And so with that, I started seeing Karen just walk through, and I said something about a lady that I had worked with many years before, was her direct boss at the time. And I just said, what do you know about this lady? I've never seen her before. And so she told me, and so we ultimately met, as we like to say, around the coffee pot. But from there, I did convince her that she ought to go out with me, and that was in May of '98. And so, through the rest of that year, we just totally fell in love pretty quickly. And so on Christmas Eve, I asked her to, first of all, I got to tell this part. This is, the guy on the left was my executive vice president at the time that I reported to. And the pig on the right, I'll explain, Harry kissed the pig, but it was a diabetes, or American Diabetes Association. It was a fundraiser, and corporations competed against each other. Harry was the highest fundraiser contributing to the American Diabetes Group, and that was my first date with Karen. And so she and I met up at the Harry Kissed the Pig. My admin that I showed you a picture of here a moment ago actually lives down in Fayetteville and close to where Karen lived at the time. And so she drove her up, and then after the Harry Kissed the Pig Saturday afternoon function, we went to dinner and had our first date. And then moving to, this is Christmas Eve, 1998, and I got down on my knee in front of Karen's family, didn't know what she was going to say, but I said, will you marry me? And she gave the right answer, and it was the answer I was hoping for. And then this is a picture at our wedding, and Bill and Lynette Suttles. Bill is the minister on the left, Dr. Suttles, former president of Georgia State University, but at a small country church in Harrelson, Georgia. And his wife, Lynette, they are both now deceased. After 50 some odd years in the ministry, Karen and I were the last couple that he married because he had Alzheimer's. And, during the wedding ceremony, Karen's name is Karen Jean, and I felt like she needed to say her name when we got married, so I'd know who I was marrying. Well, Dr. Suttles called her Karen Jane. And so I really married three ladies at one time. Now, remember, Karen Jean, Karen Jane, but then when I don't know which of the two, it's Karen Jean Jane. So, and I never know which one's going to wake up in the morning, but that's okay. I love all of them, but this was our wedding picture, July 31, 1999. And then after I got my youngest son out of school, I bought myself a Harley, and I did ride the Harley for several years, but I got over it and realized I wasn't as young as I used to be, so I did sell the Harley. And I found out this morning that Joel also had a bike, until not too long ago. And I know others in the congregation do. And Bob Cook rides his all over the country, but I never got that brave. Just various pictures. We had the opportunity of serving with the Autism Foundation for about 20 years and working with that group. And this is one of the events that Karen and I were getting ready to go to for the Autism Foundation. We're going to run through these slides very quickly, but Israel is a key place in the media right now. But let me tell you, if and when the times permit and you get a chance to go to Israel, I recommend it for anybody that is a Christian, believes in the Bible. It is the most awesome place you can ever go in your life. But this is at the Jordan River, and you can cover any of these you want to do. But just before we're getting baptized in the Jordan River, and the gentleman on our left was our Sunday school teacher, and on the right, the gentleman that organized the tour, he and his wife, and we spent about 11 days on this tour, and one was being baptized again in the Jordan River. So this is Karen getting ready to be dunked. Note she's holding her nose really tight because she doesn't want to go underwater. This is the part of the Jordan River where John the Baptist baptized Jesus, and you will notice it is a very small, muddier part of the river. It's obviously down on the side that we were on, Israel. On the other side is Jordan, and the ropes that you can see in the middle, you do not cross those ropes. If you do, you're going to be arrested. If you go on the Jordan side, if they come on the Israel side, you're going to be arrested. Yeah.
Before we started the tour with our group, we had gone into Tel Aviv a few days early, and we were tired of Tel Aviv, and we took a cab over to Jerusalem. Jerusalem. And we're walking around, we don't know the protocol, which is our bad, but it's like, oh, look, there's the Wailing Wall. So we go down, I don't know where the guys had gone. They had gone off to the left somewhere. And the next thing I know, Wanda and I are walking. This is my friend Wanda, she's my sorority sister from college, and we travel with she and her husband a lot. And Wanda and I decided we'd just go up to the Wailing Wall and put our hands on it. Well, what we did not know is that there is a male side and a female side. Wanda and I had gone to the male side, and they were not happy about it, and we were quickly escorted to this little table, and these ladies dressed us. So that's what you look like if you don't dress appropriately to go to the Wailing Wall. You want to click it? And we went, with our group, we went on a Saturday, and they were having bar mitzvahs. This is taken looking over a fence that you'll see in just a second. Again, females are not allowed on that side. And this is someone having a bar mitzvah, and they're singing and dancing. It was very, very joyful. Click. And this is where the ladies can stand up in chairs and look over the wall dividing the male and female. So I don't know if you can see, but there are women looking over to observe what's going on. But we very quickly learned there's definitely protocol there. And I'm sorry we didn't have a better picture, and I thought we took it out, but there is a cave in the crevice of that rock, and it's where the Dead Sea Scrolls were found. This is us in front of the Garden of Gethsemane, and we got up on that camel. That was interesting too. You feel like you're falling off. And this is a Jesus boat, as it was referred to, something that Jesus would have gone on when perhaps he was teaching to the crowds, but that is on the Sea of Galilee. And this is us, I'm not smiling, am I? Where they think that the tomb of Christ is. And he rose, as we all know.
And with that, we'll just wrap up briefly, but I did want to say, as I said in the beginning, it's just a blessing for us to be a part of Naples Community Church. And, you know, when we found this church and we walked in the first day, we met Kurt out on the sidewalk. We met Nancy Thomas when we walked in, and she greeted both of us and let me get you a name tag. And Karen and I knew before we finished the first service, this was home. This is what we'd been looking for, and we'd been looking for a couple of years. And we found it here, and I mean, God led us here. He led us here for a reason, and we are so blessed by each and every one of you that we know. And so with that, we're thankful for Pastor Kurt, Pastor Dan, and, you know, we continue to have many blessings. And then we're ready to turn it over.
One other thing is, you know, when you join a church like this, you don't know anybody. So the best thing you can do is to just jump in and get involved. I went, we joined the greeters, and you'd be surprised how many people you can meet as a greeter. Name tags are so important because everyone likes to be called by their name instead of going, is that Sue or is that Jody over there? What's their name? So name tags are very important. But there's a great group of ladies here, the F3s, and they meet monthly and go to lunch. It's a great time to meet people. I met LaWayne, Pam, and Julie Becker. First time I went to a dinner, and they're my friends now. But just wonderful, wonderful ladies. And there's organizations for the men. There's Care and Compassion. There's greeters. And hospitality, what I'm involved with now. There's room for everybody, so get involved. And the other thing is to read through the Bible. That's something that we do, and you'll be surprised what you will learn. And I've probably done this for 8 years in a row, and I've learned something all the time. In fact, I just read in this week the first video that was shown where Jesus is healing the man. And I just read about it in the Bible. And the other thing is that you'll know if people are lying to you. We were on a trip in Ephesus, and we had a Muslim tour guide, which is fine, but we were on a trip called Where Jesus Walked. And our tour guide proceeds to tell us that Moses was in the wilderness with the Israelites, and that he didn't send down manna, he sent down zucchini and squash. Honest. So it's just little things that you will learn, and you will learn something new every time you read it. So that's just something. So that's my part. And thank you. Thank you.
Thank you both so much, and it's truly right that you dove right in, both of you, and that is how you get involved in our church and we have open arms for that. I would just want to thank you for this. I'm opening up for a couple of questions. I know we're running a bit late. Does anyone have questions? Back here.
Richard.
Well, actually, I asked my question Friday afternoon when the building committee, which is Falconer, myself, and John, were meeting with the architect, David Corbin, subsequent to the board giving direction to proceed with the building program. So in our discussion, one of the important things that was brought up is the necessity of the church having one person to represent the church in dealing with the general contractor and the architect and the engineers and the building program. So I asked John at that time if he were willing to do that, and he said he was more than willing. And honest to God, I feel like the Lord has sent us the perfect person to handle the program.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you, Rich, and I lean on Rich and Falconer every day as we go through looking at how we're going to try and maneuver this path, but with their direction and God leading us, and with the great committees and leadership of Mike and the entire board, we'll get it figured out. He's got a plan, and we just need to find his plan.
Thank you again so much, and I want to thank Karen, double duty today. Karen made all the arrangements for the food, given Mary Rush being away, Julie Becker just having surgery. So she did that, plus get ready here for us. Thank you very much. And behind the scenes, I also want to thank Dustin for all he does in choreographing slides and for live streaming and recording, and for all of the Gulf Breeze team who stand behind the Member Spotlight program with Kathy Miller as editor, and with both Kathy Latarte and Christine Johnson as writers. We always want to thank them, and all of you who pitched in today to help Karen. Thank you big time, and for Billy and Dawn, who are always ready to help in any manner possible. Really appreciate all of you. And if anyone has further questions, come on up and see Karen and John. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you all.